All right, so let's try to keep all this stuff nice and tidy. I'm gonna say like apply texture. I mean, it's a bunch of noises, but I'm gonna say apply texture. You could do something later here, like, actually put a texture image there if you wanted to, but for now. So we'll just say surface. Cool. So we can do a couple things now with this surface. First and foremost is we want to actually draw the curves on here that will represent the main fracture. And we can actually draw the curves right onto it using this geometry projection here in the projection tab. So you can see now we have a grid that represents it. And by being in the manipulator mode here, you can see I have this little red cursor going around. So I'm going to say, let's draw a left side, which is going to represent the extent of the destruction on the left side, and everything else will remain intact. Then we'll have a curve on the right side, and everything else on the right side will be intact, which will leave everything in between those two curves will be what's going to be destroyed. And then we'll have a third curve right in the middle, actually, to determine where the crack initially appears. So let's just actually do that. So I'm going to say, because we're going to pull this left and right, try to just make a curve that goes left and right. Like, don't do this kind of thing, because now when this area here to the left of the curve pulls left and this area up here pulls right, it's going to get caught on this area here. Now we could build that into our sim, but for the sake of making it not as complicated right now, let's just keep it simple and it'll still look really cool anyway. So again, so just make it kind of like jagged, something like this. We're going to add a little bit more detail to this also, but something like that. And then maybe over here, we'll have it kind of follow that a little bit, maybe get a little tight there. Then maybe come out a lot here. Obviously, you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing, but just something cool like that. Great. And then we'll want that middle curve, which again will represent essentially the initial crack that will form, and all the pieces will pull away from the crack to the outer lines that we just drew. So something like that. Cool. So there we go. So these curves are going to become the basis of the cutting objects that we're going to drive through this terrain. So a couple little things we need to do to clean up first, which is we're going to need these cutters to completely span the terrain that we're destroying. And right now they don't quite make it. See how there's a gap and stuff? So rather than build some crazy procedural thing to automatically capture them, I mean, you can. They'll just be faster to just grab them. So I'm in selection mode 2 to grab points. I drew a box around them. I press T to translate. I'm just going to literally move them this way. Same thing on this side. Just grab them, move them that way. Good enough. We're going to clean this up a little bit using a resample. Right now we have bunches of points here and there. We even have some little stuff here that might get us in trouble. I'm going to use a resample to just kind of clean it all up. Point 1 is obviously too short of a distance between these points right now. We want to make it as low as we can, or rather as high as we can, while not going too high. If it's too high, then we just have no detail anymore. So let's say, how high can we get it while it looks pretty tight? Looks like 0.5. Looks pretty good to me. Cool. And we're going to want to move this around a little. We're going to jitter these, kind of how we just jittered we used the noise on the ground plane. Let's make another point VOP here. And I usually like to use the wrangles to do a lot of Vex stuff, but when it comes to the noises, it's just so much easier to be able to just drop a noise down, and it has all the parameters all there, all ready to go. And kind of how we've been used to, we're going to take the point, sample the noise. We want a 3D noise this time, and I want the simplex because I want it to go between -1 and 1. And we're just going to say, hey, whatever the position was, add this 3D, we change this to 3D noise, add this vector to that, and now that's your new position. And you can see already that, sure, it definitely moved it. Didn't move it enough though for what I want. I'm gonna say, at the very least, I want to up the frequency. I want it to just be a tight, like a very tiny jitter. So maybe 50-ish, right in the middle. So now we can see it just moves it just a little bit, but enough that it kind of looks significantly crunchier. And again, what really matters is how does it look from back here? It definitely looks, just those slight little jags is what I want, not these relatively smooth lines. So there we go. So the frequency of 50 in the simplex is enough. Now we're gonna be returning to this idea a lot of having something, adding a noise to it to make it look cooler. And our Boolean is so powerful now that it can handle like lots of very detailed jagged geometry like this, as you'll see. So I'm gonna say jitter curves. Very good. And we can put a little null here to just to keep it nice and organized. We'll just say something like cutter curves.